Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Greetings and blessings. This is Sheikh Mustafa. It's Mustafa's Boot Camp. Now today we're going to do an introduction to the Gospels. And I hope you find it interesting. I'm sure you will. Maybe there's some facts in there that you haven't heard before. And maybe you can learn some things from that. As we get started and we look at the Gospels, there's one thing I want to deal with before that, and that's the fact that we have in the English translation of the Bible, we have what's called an Old Testament and a New Testament. When you look at those words, actually you have very little meaning for them. The more proper word would be covenant. The Greek word is diakepe. Now, the New Testament, called the New Testament, is actually a new covenant. It makes better sense, doesn't it? When I say testament, I think of one thing in my mind. I'm thinking a testimony. Somebody's given a testimony, and which it actually is. It's a testimony to Jesus and what he did. But it's also a covenant between the person, the reader, and God, Allah. Now, we look at the background of the New Testament. I keep saying New Testament. I'm going to keep saying that probably just because it's easier for me to say that. But when I say it, I actually mean New Covenant. But when we look at the background, and we look at the background of the Gospels. Now, I've taught the Gospels extensively for, I don't know, maybe 30 years. I remember when I was first licensed, way back when, I had a little ministry, and the ministry was to a transitional home. Now, maybe if you don't know what a transitional home is, it's a place where people who have problems, various problems come. Maybe they had a drug-related problem, and it messed them up, you know, and messed up their thinking, their mind. Or maybe they have a mental illness, and that's another problem. I've even had one say he was hearing voices and believed it was a demon talking to him. So it was an interesting ministry, to say the least. But I would go there once a week and I would teach the Gospels, and we would sit down all at a round table, and the lady that was there to take care of things, she would make us, you know, some kind of beverage, you know, whether it was coffee, tea, or Coke, or drinks, or whatever it was. But she would make that, maybe a little snack, because she knew, I think she was interested into it too, because every week she'd maybe make a little cake or something, you know, and we'd have that, you know, and we'd sit around and talk a little bit, and then we'd get into the Gospels. And it was interesting, to say the least. But as time progressed, I had to give it up, and I had to move away from that area. And in fact, that was the same area that I also had the prison ministry, and it was a work release center, and I did a weekly ministry there. So I was pretty busy, and still not really full-time in the pastorate at that time. I was just licensed, you know, and was working towards that. Okay, so when we look at these four books, and we're going to be looking at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, as I said before, and I said in the scripture 1 and 2, if you watch that, the book of John is out there. It's not the same. It gives different information than what the three Synoptic Gospels. Now, we call them synoptic, and that means simply seen together. Seen together. And Matthew, Mark, and Luke are synoptic. They're seen together. And that's the way we view them. Probably Mark is the oldest. We think it's the oldest. We have fragments, you know. I want you to understand, and this is really tough to say, but I'm really sorry, we don't have any gospel. We don't have it. We don't have the original What we got is copies of what a writer wrote several hundred years later. Does that sink in? So these were not eyewitnesses that wrote these Gospels. These were not eyewitnesses. Now they ascribed the names like John and Mark, and they put these, names of the apostles on there, but chances are, and it's just like a lot of people say, that that's just a forgery to get people to read it. But we do not have the original of anything there. Of any New Testament book, we don't have the original of it. So what we're actually looking at is copies of 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 copies. And when you start to do all that copying like that, and then you start to translate some of these copies into Latin, you get variants, and we went all through that before. If you don't understand that, you can watch my videos on Scripture and inspiration, and you're going to see what I'm talking about when I say variants. Okay, so Matthew takes the kind of stand of the Orthodox Jew. He's pretty well where he's going to give start off with, he's going to give a genealogy and all these other things, to prove the lineage of Jesus. Mark and Luke, we probably think they were Hellenistic writers. Well, we think all of them were Hellenistic writers because of the time period and where they were written. But Mark and Luke were definitely the names, not Jewish names, but Hellenistic names, Gentile names, So what we see is a formation of three Gospels there. And they have different readings. The accounts that some of them give, and we're going to look at some of that later, because this is just the introduction to the Gospels. We're looking at a 15 or 20 minute video on 1,000 hours that you could be teaching on every aspect of it. People tell me, hey, you forgot this, or you forgot that, or you forgot this, and I have to cherry pick what I think is important, and maybe what I'm thinking is important is not what they think is important, but you can't give all the information in a 15-minute video. It's just impossible, and don't even believe it. My interest in this is to get you to spend the time. Now, if something as important as where you're going to spend eternity, I think that you should spend a few minutes and find out exactly some of these things. I know as you get older, as you're young, it doesn't bother you too much, because you're going about your life, and you got this long life ahead. But as you get older, you look at your vulnerability, and you look at people are dying, and people are getting sick with all these chronic diseases, and they're not able to do things, and probably one of the worst things is getting a stroke, because when you get one of those, your video days or your teaching days and anything else, you're walking, you're talking, all that's over with, for the most part, depending on the severity of the stroke. But so you got to do things while you can, and that's why I'm pulling the trigger on this one in boot camp, because I don't know how long I have. Every day is a miracle. I wake up in the morning and I say, what am I going to do today that's going to help me, that's going to help somebody else? And I got 3 boys that I have to look after, and I'm a single parent, so taking care of these guys is a 24-hour job, 7 days a week. And you know what I'm talking about, especially when they're teenagers. They don't listen to anything. They know everything. And okay, so these 3 Gospels, Matthew takes the more Jewish position. Mark and Luke, Luke they figure was probably a physician. And all these things are debated. You can't say for certainty any of these things. This is just what scholars believe. And when you read a text, you really couldn't tell, you know, in one place they're eyewitnesses of, you know, or it seemed good to me to gather the information and write it down. I see in one part of an introduction, but so that means that there were something to gather it from earlier. Now, that means that something was out there. And you hear all these things that are postulated, you know, there's a Q document that they were written from, and, you know, searching for Q is like trying to find the tooth fairy or something, because it just doesn't exist. I mean, this is something that went on. Somebody thought this up and tried to explain something with it, and that's where Q came from. I don't know. Where's Q? Show me Q. I want to see Q. I want to see the original Q. That document, that set of documents doesn't exist. I don't know where it's at. It's just like the originals. They don't exist. You don't know where they're at. So you're basing your belief in these four Gospels by faith. It's faith, because they don't exist. I want you to think about trying to write. I want you to think about trying to write on something that's about as flimsy as, I guess, probably a little better than toilet paper, but probably in between that and some other poor grade of paper. I want you to think about copying a very important book. And this is what you write it on. Say it's procedures for a heart transplant, and you write it on basically toilet paper. After a few times the doctors use that, what kind of condition do you think it's in? Not too good, right? It's probably breaking up, and you can just imagine. So now you got parts of it that are skipped. Now you got things where the doctors are standing there and, well, looking at this, what should I do next, right? Pretty much the same thing. I mean, parchment, it wasn't parchment back then, because that was when the codexes came about, but this was a very fragile paper. All right? Keep that in mind, because this is where the copies came from. It wasn't until about probably 250, 300 they started to use better quality stuff, you know, and the scribes were better trained, and they probably actually had better copies from that date on, you know. But as we look at the New Testament, and these four books begin the New Testament, they usually are in that chronological order. They want, you know, it's arranged that way so you can read about Jesus, some of the things that he did, perhaps some of the things that he said. Well, they say that he said. You know, when you look at these things, most of these things are debated, and I don't know of anything that's not debated today. So there's where your faith comes in. You got to have faith to believe that this is the way it is, but then your faith gets shaken by the preservation of the documents themselves. Are so flimsily preserved that maybe God didn't think it was important. Think about that. Maybe he didn't think it was so important to have these writings in the exact form. So you got what you got. Now, maybe he knew somewhere around the 6th century a caravan trader was going to be a prophet, and a whole new revelation was coming. So maybe that was the plan. I want you to think about that. Maybe that was the plan, that there was going to be another set of documents that were coming. Something to think about. As I give these information, as I talk about this stuff, you know, this is something that you should be taking and looking up for yourself. You should find out the truth to all things. I mean, don't take Mustafa's word for anything. I don't want you to. Don't take my word for it. But search it out for yourself and use good sources. That's another thing. Look for good, solid sources. Don't look for some crazy fool teaching, that aliens created the world or something. Don't look for stuff like that. But look for good sources, and that's why I gave you the library. That's why I wanted to give that library, so you could see some of the sources that I've been using for years and others have been using for years, and it seems like they work. Okay, so in this introduction, there's 4 Gospels. Mark probably being the oldest, Matthew written more as a Jew would be thinking, and Luke written probably as a Gentile would be thinking, And when it comes to various things are omitted, various things are added, they're not exact word for word. That's when I was in the seminary, we learned, well, that's the reason why you got 4 of them, because this one gives you this information, and then this one gives you an addition to that information, and this one, is an addition to that. And it sounded reasonable. It sounded reasonable. So, I bit that bad fish, and and that's what I believe for years. It's by faith. I preached these and taught these more than probably anybody I can imagine. In the church situation, who doesn't preach from the book of John? Who doesn't preach that Jesus is the Word, and the Word is, come incarnate, and the Word is, been since the beginning of the foundation, before the foundation of the world. I mean, as you read John, there's not going to be very little doubt up here, unless there's crackers up here, that Jesus is higher than just a prophet, that he's more than just a prophet. I mean, you can't read that book and not see divinity there. He doesn't specifically ever call himself God. He doesn't call himself divine or anything else. But as you look at his actions and what people are saying about him, and the whole jest of the New Testament, the whole gear of the New Testament is that Jesus is God, which is a very complicated thing now. And as we get into future studies, and probably we'll look at some of the when we get into Christology, I'll talk some about the Trinity and things like that, and I'll give you my view of the Trinity. My views are not everyone's views. Like I told you, probably in the introduction, that I've always been in that canoe paddling upstream, and sometimes I didn't have an oar, and that's the way I spent my life. I mean, if it was a traditional whatever, I was always looking for the non-traditional. I was always looking for the other side, and that's the road I took. There was this beaten path through the woods. I'd go this way and make my own path. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way I live my life. So I hope that you get the gist of what I'm saying. So you have John. John is a very different book, a theological book. We'll look at some of the... I think I'm going to do a video on some of the embarrassing verses of the Bible, because, man, I mean, they say all these things about the Quran. They say all these things about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some of them sound embarrassing. And even digging into hadith and misappropriating hadith, like so many do. I mean, without any knowledge, any great knowledge. I'm not a Quranic scholar, and I'm no scholar in hadith. And there are people that are. And I used to question this and question that and question this, and now I read. I study by myself. I collect all the information. My study is a whole lot different probably than most people, because I'm systematic, and I don't study one aspect, but I look for all the aspects of what that means. And I think I got two I got two sets of hadith, and there's more, you know, that are sahih, that we call authentic, that are considered the most authentic. I have the most authentic hadith. I have Sahih Bukhari, and that's considered probably the number one, and then I got Muslim on number two. And each of these are about 8 or 9 volumes, you know, 7 volumes, and just thousands and thousands of sayings, and, you know, and then as you look at hadith, they had what they called an isnad. I mean, if you'd have an isnad on a New Testament, I don't think you'd have a New Testament, because whoever said whatever they said would have to have witnesses, and these witnesses would have to be valid, and these witnesses would have to be more than one, otherwise it would be considered weak, and you know, it would just, there's a whole criteria on how you judge these ancient scriptures. So if you applied that to the New Testament, I don't think you'd have a New Testament, because a lot of this is just hearsay and collecting this information and that information. I don't know what source he used to collect that and that from to put the Gospels together. You know, there's always a lot of doubt there. So think about these things. I mean, as you pick your Bible up, and I don't know, a Muslim's going to have a different perspective than a Christian, but if you're a Christian and you pick your Bible up and you open it up, listen to what I said. You know, and as we read these verses, actually get them in your head like you got some music from today in your head, you know, that you can't get out. Read them until you can't get it out of here, because that's the only way you're going to learn these things. You're not going to learn them if you just, well, I think this Sunday I'm going to show up at church, and I think, you know, I'm going to listen to the sermon, and you know, as they're sitting there, I used to watch people, and you could look at their eyes, you know, and I know good and well they're thinking about lunch. They're thinking about going out to streets or you know, Mama Lou's in Robertsdale, and I'm not putting a peg in for that, but this is Robertsdale, Alabama, and this is Alabama where I pastored a church, and they're thinking about going out there to the buffet. What's going to be on the buffet today, you know, or thinking about going hunting, or thinking about going fishing, or thinking about 1,000 different things except for what you're saying. And when they walk out of there, they might as well not have been there, because they didn't hear a thing you said. And you can tell these people. You know who's who. And if you ask them to just tell me what I said today, they would just give you that blank look like a deer in a headlight. You know, they're just, what did you say? You know, I can't remember now, because it wasn't important to them. If it wasn't important, do you think you're gonna forget? If it's important to you, you think you're not going to hang on to every word that's said? Do you think you're not going to take and check these things out? If it's important to you, if going to heaven is important, and it ought to be, because that's where you're going to spend eternity. You know, I'm 63. I spent 63 years on this planet, and when I look back at all that time, I got some memories, but I got very few memories for 63 years. And, you know, I'm getting towards the end. I'm in the last quarter of the ball game right now. You know, I'm saying the last quarter, where things are breaking down. The ball is getting all wore out, you know, and I'm just waiting for it to pop any day, you know. People ask how you doing. Well, that's how I'm doing. I'm doing from day to day, and I'm doing the best I can, because I got one goal in mind, and that's to get into Jannah. I want to, you know, be one of the bunch, and there's going to be a small group, I'm sure, that are going to get into heaven. And I think a lot of others, I think, are going to be on the outside, and they're going to be wishing, and it's going to be too late, but they're going to be wishing that they did certain things, and they didn't do it. Think about your life. I'm telling you, think about your life. And don't just blow it off what I'm saying. Think about what I'm saying. Because you know what? It's coming your way. Today, tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years, whatever, it's coming your way. So you think about it, and think about how you're preparing. You know, people are preppers. Everywhere you look, preppers. And it came in handy, didn't it? This preparation came in handy when all these shortages came up from people buying 45 packs of toilet paper and stuff like that, you know. And I noticed that was the first thing to go. I mean, of all the things when you're going to have a shortage, people running by toilet paper. Yeah. It's just, something's wrong. Something's wrong, man. Okay, and they bought up all the toilet paper. Well, a lot of this preparation came in handy, didn't it? And you wish, hey, I wish I had a storehouse full of stuff now because I can't go to Walmart and get what I need. And the little stores don't have it. If anybody's going to have it, Walmart's going to have it, or Save a Lot, or, I mean, not Save a Lot, but these big box stores like Sam's and Costco and all the rest of them, they're going to have it. And they didn't have it. And you were out in the cold for it, weren't you? Well, just like that toilet paper that you got left out, if you don't listen to what I'm saying, and don't just listen to what I'm saying, but a lot of other people, just listen to what they're saying, a lot of other preachers, they're saying that you're not going to make it. You think about that. You think hard about that. Now, I can't plead enough about that, because you will not make it just being a passive Christian, just because you said, oh, I accept Jesus in my heart. You think that's going to be enough? Well, according to Christians, that's enough. So you can live any way you want. You can go out to the bars and drink. You can smoke one cigarette after another. You can chase one woman after another. You can do all these other things, and that's just good enough. I'm saved. You know. All you got to do is confess that I'm saved. Profess Jesus. Good luck. That's all I can say. Good luck. That's why I'm so glad that I got on a straight path. I mean, it may not be the path you would choose, and that's okay. That's fine. But whatever path you're on, you live that path. You live that path. Now these Gospels are going to be extensive, getting back onto them. Like I said, we're going to look at some of the content. Well, it's impossible to go through all the content, and I'm going to cherry pick this and that, and I'm going to pick some interesting things, and I think you're going to enjoy these. Probably one or two videos I'm going to make on the Gospels. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but we'll touch on some of the high notes of it. And look, if you're enjoying these videos, and you got a question and it concerns Christianity, you give me an email. And you can do that at americanislam.ed.gmail or americanislam.ed@yahoo.com or at Yahoo. But write me, give me an email, and you know, I'll do my best. I'll get back with you onto it. If I can't answer it, I tell you what, I know a lot of people that can. But if it's concerning Christianity, now if it's concerning anything with the Quran or Hadith or all these other things, I probably could give you an answer. It probably might not be the right answer. So you want to stick to the Christian scriptures, because that's where my expertise is. If you had a problem with your heart, right? You wouldn't go to a foot doctor, right? You go to a heart doctor. Well, same analogy. Hope you have a good day. I hope you stay safe. I hope that this pandemic, whatever is going on, and I don't know what's going on 100%, but I do know 500,000 people died. I do know that I had an ex-wife that passed away because of it. So take care. Wear your masks, stay out of crowds, wash your hands, do all the things that they say do. and I think it's going to be over with. If you can get a vaccination, that's going to be up to you. I'm not saying go and get vaccinated, but if you're gonna be around people and you're going to be in crowds and you're vulnerable, I'd say probably be a good idea. It would probably be a good idea. Me myself, I'm kind of a recluse here. I'm kind of in the house. I don't go nowhere. I don't do anything. I just go to the store, take care of these kids, study, and that's my life. So, Assalamu alaikum, brothers. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, give it the thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that bell, because I'm going to be having new videos coming out all the time. And as I said before, the internet is, YouTube is a big platform, and you can lose me in a second. So if you don't subscribe, you probably won't find me again somewhere. So have a good day. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters.